Before we start today's episode, we need to say something clearly, and we mean every single word of this. This episode is about religion, faith, atheism, and belief. For billions of people, these are the most personal things in their lives. We respect that fully. What you're about to hear is a conversation, not a judgment. We are not here to tell you what to believe. We are not here to mock anyone's religion, disrespect any scripture, or attack any community's faith. If you believe in God, that is completely valid. And if you don't, that is valid too. Our only goal is to think out loud about questions that most of us carry but rarely say. If something in this episode makes you uncomfortable, we ask you to sit with that feeling before reacting. Different people holding different views in the same room is not an attack, it's just a real conversation. There are two questions that no human being has ever fully answered in all of recorded history. Where did we come from, and what happens when we die? Every culture, every civilization, every society that has ever existed tried to answer these, and almost all of them ended up at the same place. There must be something bigger than us, something out there. And that answer became religion. In this episode, we are going to ask whether that answer still holds up in 2026. Because here is the uncomfortable part. The same thing that gave billions of people hope, meaning, and community also gave us the crusades, caste discrimination, the 9/11 attack, and the communal riots in our own backyard. So, does God exist? Or did we just invent God because we simply needed to? This is what we are going to talk about today.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Think Now podcast. I am Abhishek.
And I am Varun. If you've been listening since the beginning, we pick topics that make people think twice, right? So, episode 1 was about the main character mindset, and episode 2 was about corporate collapses. Episode 3 was about the console wars. And you know what? Episode 4 might be the one that gets us in more trouble. So,
Genuinely.
here's why this episode exists. Abhishek and I don't agree on this completely at all. And we thought, instead of pretending we agree, let's just have the actual conversation in front of you.
So, before anything else, let us tell you where we each stand.
I'm a person that neither believes in God nor religion. I don't believe organized religion is doing the world more good than harm right now. And honestly, I think the idea that this universe might be a giant simulation makes more sense to me than a creator called God. So, yeah, we'll get into that.
And I believe in God. I am not gonna just sit here and say I have all the answers. But I believe that there is something, a force, an intelligence, a presence behind all of this. And religion, for me, is also about a community, a culture, and meaning. It's not just about fear.
Neither of us is trying to convince the other today. That's not the point at all. The point is to think harder about something most of us were just told to accept.
Doubt, think, evolve.
Let's go. Let's start with something both believers and non believers should find interesting. Why does religion exist at all? Yuval Noah Harari, who wrote the famous book called Sapiens, makes this argument. Around 70,000 years ago, human beings went through a massive mental shift. Suddenly, we could think in stories, in ideas that don't physically exist at all. We could imagine things. And because we could share those stories, thousands of strangers could work together toward the same goal. Religion, he says, was one of the first shared stories that followed human civilizations into actually function. It wasn't just about God, it was about having a common framework that millions of people could all believe in at once.
That's a fair point, but it's only explaining one thing. It tells you what religions does for society. It doesn't tell you whether God is actually real. Those are two different questions. Yes, religion helped build civilizations, but so did the idea of justice, and justice is real.
Fair point, but here's where it gets interesting. Across all of human history, archaeologists and historians have found over 10,000 different gods and religions, be it the Greek gods, the Roman gods, the Norse gods, and even the Egyptian god. Each civilization had its own version. They cannot all be right. Most of them are now in history books called mythology. So what makes the religion that survived different from the ones that didn't survive at all?
What makes them different is that they stood the test of time. They spread across generations, across countries, across completely different cultures, and billions of people still hold them today. That's not nothing.
Or maybe they spread because the people who practiced them had more political and military power, not because they were not true.
I won't deny that history has been messy.
Pew Research is one of the biggest religion studies ever done, covering over 230 countries, found that 84% of the world identifies with a religion. That's roughly 6 billion people. I'm not laughing at that number, honestly. I'm just asking, why?
Because maybe it's a pointing at something real.
Or because the need for meaning, the need for community, for an answer to death is so deeply built into being human that we always create systems to explain it. Whether those systems are literally true is a separate question.
Here's what believers and atheists usually end up fighting each other: science versus religion. And I want to say something that might surprise you. I don't think that they have to be enemies. Einstein didn't believe in a personal God, a God who sits up there listening to prayers and deciding outcomes. But he spent his entire life in awe of how the universe works. He said that the more he studied physics, the more he felt kind of a deep wonder at how perfectly ordered everything is. He called it a cosmic religious feeling. He even specifically said that he believed in what he called the Spinoza's God, not a person, but the laws of nature themselves. The fact that the universe had rules at all and that we can understand those rules, that felt almost sacred to him.
And that's a very honest position. But it's very different from what most religions ask you to believe in. Most religion describes a God who's aware of you personally, who judges you, who answers your prayers even. That specific version, a conscious being who made humans on purpose and watches over us, that's where I can't follow, honestly.
But the biggest question stands: why is there something rather than nothing? Why does any of this exist at all?
Here's one of the strongest arguments believers make, and I want to be honest about it. The universe looks almost perfectly designed for life. The force of gravity, the strength of the nuclear forces inside atoms, the way light behaves, if any of these were even slightly different, there would be no stars, no planets, and no life, and even we wouldn't be there. The odds of all this being an accident seems impossible.
Exactly, and that's the fine tuning argument. It feels like someone set the dials.
But here's the counterpart. We only exist to notice this because we live in the version of the universe that worked. If the settings had been different, there would be no one here to call it an accident. It's a bit like winning the lottery and saying, wow, what are the odds? And well, someone always wins.
Okay, but then answer this. What was there before the Big Bang Theory? Before the universe even existed?
Stephen Hawking, one of the highly acclaimed scientists, gave what I think is one of the cleanest answers to this. He said, asking what came before the Big Bang is like asking, what's south of the South Pole? The question just doesn't work at all. Because time itself didn't exist before the Big Bang. There is no before. The concept just doesn't apply.
And that fully satisfies you?
Well, it does satisfies me more than God did it. Because here's the problem with that answer. If God created the universe, who created God? If your reply is God always existed, then why wouldn't the universe have always existed in some form? You're using the same logic, but stopping one step earlier.
The classic response to that is everything that begins to exist must have a cause. The universe began to exist, so something caused it. That cause is what we call God.
Okay. Bertrand Russell, one of the most respected philosophers of the 20th century, had a sharp response to this. He said, the argument is like everything has a mother, therefore the universe has a mother. At some point, you have to accept that something exists without a cause. The question is whether you want to call that thing God or just the universe itself. Because if you say the cause of the universe is God, then I will ask, what's the cause of the God?
This is going to go in circles forever.
That's actually an honest answer. These questions don't have neat endings at all. And anyone who says they have fully figured this out in either direction should make you suspicious, honestly.
There is one thing science has not been able to crack, and it might be the most important thing of all consciousness. Not the brain, we have mapped that pretty well. We know which parts of the brain activate when you feel pain, when you see a color, and when you're in love. But here's what science hasn't explained. Why is there an experience at all? Why does it feel like something to be you? Right now, you're just processing this audio, you're experiencing it. There is a you inside that is aware. Where does that come from? Philosopher David Chalmers called this the hard problem of consciousness. And even scientists who don't believe in God admit that we don't have any good explanation for it.
I won't argue against that. Consciousness is genuinely one of the strangest things in the universe. But the phrase we don't understand this yet is not the same as God is the answer, right?
No, but it should make you less certain in your atheism.
It does. I want to be clear about this. I am not a certain atheist, I am a probabilistic one. The version of God I find unlikely is a personal, watchful, judgment giving God. The question of whether there's something bigger than us that we don't understand yet fully, I hold that one lightly.
That's the most honest thing you have said so far.
And it connects to something else I believe, which is the simulation theory. Let me explain that. Before you roll your eyes, hear me out. This is not science fiction, it's a serious philosophical argument. Nick Bostrom, a philosopher at Oxford, laid this out in 2003. Here's the logic. If civilization keeps advancing, better computers, more powerful technology, eventually someone will be able to create a computer simulation of a world with conscious beings inside it. Just like we play or make video games, but way more advanced, right? So detailed that the beings inside it feel completely real. If you look at video games they are making nowadays, now if you can run one simulation, you can run trillions of them. The number of simulated minds would eventually be far greater than the number of real minds. So statistically, the chance that you are one of the original real beings and not a being inside a simulation becomes extremely small.
Elon Musk has spoken about this.
Elon said that there's a billion to one chance we are living in a base reality. Neil deGrasse Tyson, one of the most well-known scientists alive right now, put the odds at better than 50-50. These aren't people on the fringes, right?
How is this different from believing in God?
Two things. First, it's testable. We can look for evidence. Some physicists have looked at whether the universe behaves like a computation at its smaller scale. Things like the fact that reality seems to have a smallest possible unit of space, which is the Planck length, which is a bit like a pixel. Second, it doesn't require anything supernatural. It says if technology advances enough, this becomes possible. That's a much smaller logical jump.
But it has the same infinite regress problem. Who created the simulator and who created whoever built that?
Same problem, I'll admit that honestly. But here's what I find interesting about your pushback. You said that whatever I call it a simulator of God, I'm still pointing at something bigger than this reality we can see. And honestly, I've thought about that.
Maybe both of us are describing the same mystery, just with different words.
Maybe that's the most honest thing I can say about it. Okay, so we've been philosophical. I want to talk about something that genuinely upsets me. Something that is not abstract. It happened in our country. It cost people their lives.
Go ahead, but I want to say upfront. You can criticize how religion is misused without criticizing the religion itself.
I agree with that line, and I'll hold it. But what I'm about to say needs to be said. Let me give you three examples. Real events. If you've heard of them, this will remind you. If you haven't, you need to know. On the 27th of February 2002, a train carrying Hindu pilgrims was set on fire at Godhra station in Gujarat. 59 people died. Many of them were women and children. It was a horrifying attack. What followed that was even worse. Over the next 3 months, large scale violence erupted across Gujarat. Mobs targeted Muslim neighborhoods, houses were burned, people were killed on the streets, women were attacked. The official government death toll was 1,044 people, which were 790 Muslims and 254 Hindus. Independent investigations put the number closer to even 2,000. The state government's response during those 3 months has been questioned by Supreme Court, the Human Rights Watch, and multiple independent commissions. Hundreds of thousands of people were displaced from their homes. This was not a fight between armies. These were just ordinary neighborhoods, ordinary people. The next incident in 2013, in August 2013, in a village called Kawal in Uttar Pradesh, a local dispute between some Hindu and Muslim young men turned violent. Three people were killed. That should have been a tragedy contained to one village, right? What happened instead? Viral videos started circulating on WhatsApp and social media. Some of those videos were fake, some were from completely different countries, but they spread fast. They showed violence and they were designed to make each community feel the other was out to get them, they feel scared. Over the next few weeks, riots spread across Muzaffarnagar and nearby districts. 62 people were killed, were 42 Muslims and 20 Hindus. Over 60,000 people, mostly Muslims, were forced to flee their homes. People who had lived next to each other for generations suddenly couldn't. Political leaders were later accused of making inflammatory speeches that poured fuel on the fire. The next incident, Delhi 2020. In February 2020, at the height of protests against the Citizenship Amendment Act, which we don't need to fully get into right now, but it was a deeply divisive law. Riots broke out in northeast Delhi. Over 6 days, 53 people were killed. 36 of them were Muslim, 15 were Hindu, 2 were unidentified. Over 200 people were injured. Mosques, temples, and homes were attacked. There were documented cases of police standing by while violence happened, in some cases, even participating. The riots did not just start spontaneously. A political figure made a speech just before the violence began, giving police an ultimatum to clear protesters. Buses were reportedly brought in carrying outsiders. These are in ancient history. Most of us were alive for at least one of these. And here's what they have in common. In each case, ordinary people who had been neighbors for decades turned on each other. And in each case, there were political actors, politicians, media, social media who had spent years slowly building the conditions for that explosion. And that's the part I want to talk about.
And in all the three cases, politicians from multiple parties were involved in either cause or falling or to stop these violences.
Yes, and this is the brutal truth about Indian politics. Religion is the most effective weapon ever invented for winning elections. Let me explain that. If I can make you believe that your identity, your deepest, most personal identity, is tied to your religion, and then I can convince you that the other religion is a threat to everything you are. I don't need roads, I don't need schools, I don't need jobs, I don't need better infrastructure, I just need you scared. A scared voter votes for whoever promises protection for them.
That's vote bank politics.
And it's not just one party. Across Indian history, multiple parties have done this. The Bharatiya Janata Party's political project is built on Hindutva, the idea that India is fundamentally a Hindu nation. That has real consequences on minorities. But Congress too has played religious and caste politics for decades. The AIMIM, the party led by Asaduddin Owaisi, uses Muslim community politics to build its base. Nobody is clean here
And then the media amplifies it.
because outrage gets views. Research from MIT found that misinformation, especially the kind that makes people angry, spreads about 6 times faster on social media than accurate, calm news. That's not an accident. Politicians, news channels, and WhatsApp forwards have all figured out the same thing. Fear and anger move people to action, and action in this context means votes, donations, and mob violence. Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, the man who wrote our constitution, said something in 1956 that I keep coming back to. He said that if you want to build a society based on equality, you cannot build it on religion. Because religion, by its nature itself, creates in groups and out groups. It tells you who is pure and who is not, who belongs and who doesn't belong. Now you can debate whether he was fully right, but look at what the caste system has done to this country over thousands of years. Look at what those three riots did to those neighborhoods. Innocent people. The people who died were not combatants, they were just neighbors. And if Dr. Ambedkar is the national voice on this, we have our own right here in Tamil Nadu. Periyar E.V. Ramasamy Naikar said something that most people from this part of the country have grown up hearing, but maybe never fully sat with. He said that it is absurd to quote religion or God or religious doctrines to render people as the lowest castes. That one line dismantles centuries of justification because that's exactly what has happened and still happens. Religion was used as the rule book. It told people where they belonged in the hierarchy, who could enter a temple, who could draw water from a well, who was pure and who was not. Periyar didn't believe in God at all. He was completely blunt about it. He called God a tool of control. What he really believed in was self respect. His entire movement was called the self respect movement. The idea was simple. You cannot fight for your rights if you have been taught that by your religion that you don't deserve them.
And Tamil Nadu's political landscape is still shaped by that legacy. DMK, AADMK, the Dravidian movement that runs through all of it comes directly from what Periyar started. So this isn't just a philosophy from 100 years ago. It's still alive in how the state votes, thinks, and argues about identity.
Exactly. Which is why I think it's worth saying Periyar wasn't anti Hindu in the way that phrase is used as an insult today. He was anti exploitation. He just followed the evidence of exploitation back to its source, and religion was always in that chain somewhere. That's a different thing.
Every major religion, at its actual core, preaches the opposite of this. The Quran, the Gita, the Bible, the central message in all of them is compassion, justice, and service. The religion I believe in does not ask me to hurt anyone.
I believe you when you say that, but the institution of religion and the actual text of religion are not the same thing. Throughout history, the institution has been used to justify slavery, to justify caste discrimination, to keep women from education, to start wars. The text says love your neighbor. The institution says here's a list of people who aren't your neighbor.
That's human failure, not God's.
And that's a fair answer, but When riots happen, it's not the extreme fringe doing it. It's ordinary people who have been slowly primed over years. Through sermons, through WhatsApp forwards, through news anchors screaming, until one day one spark and something terrible happens. The riots don't start with extremists, they start in the middle, with normal people who have been fed a certain story long enough that they believe the people next door are a threat. And I'm sorry, but that terrifies me a lot.
I think we both agree on this. Using religion to hurt people, to discriminate, to start fires, and then walk away, that is indefensible. No footnote. No, but they started it.
No qualification. Human beings killing each other because someone told them God prefers their side of the story. I cannot make peace with that. I won't.
My turn, because I think we have spent enough time on religion's worst moments, and I want to talk about what it actually does for most people. Not the riots, the daily reality for billions of people. A Harvard research team led by Tyler Vanderwell tracked over 74,000 women across more than 20 years. They found that the women who attended religious services regularly were 33% less likely to die during that period compared to those who never attended. They also had lower rates of depression and were far less likely to die by suicide.
Is that the religion or just the community?
Fair question, but here's the thing. For most people, you don't get the community without the shared belief. The community is built on that belief. You can't just pull one out and keep the other.
But you could build those communities around anything, a neighborhood, a sports club, or even a social cause.
Maybe, but the religion offers something those don't, a way to make sense of suffering. When someone you love dies suddenly, the universe doesn't care. Is not something most people can live with. For billions of people, they are with God provides something real, not just a lie we tell ourselves, something that genuinely helps them keep going.
I won't dismiss that. The need for meaning in the face of loss is one of the most human things there is. I just think we need to build secular ways to provide that too.
We can try, but religion has been doing this for thousands of years, for people across every culture on earth. Removing it would, without replacing it, would leave a lot of people with nothing. And I don't think most atheists would have a real answer to that as of yet.
That's fair, and honestly, that's why I'm not the kind of atheist who goes around telling people to give up their faith. What I care about is that faith doesn't get turned into a weapon, and that asking questions is never treated as an attack.
Every major religious tradition has a deep tradition of questioning within it. Sufism in Islam, Advaita Vedanta in Hinduism, Zen in Buddhism. These great theologians all asked very hard questions. That spirit is supposed to be inside the religion, not outside it.
The scholars asked questions, the institution didn't always let them survive to publish the answers.
Ha! That I can't fully argue against.
Here's what keeps me up at night. Why is there something rather than nothing? Why is there consciousness at all? Why does the universe follow mathematical rules? And why are humans able to understand those rules? I don't have answers to those. Science doesn't have complete answers to those. And anyone who tells you they're fully certain in either direction is not being honest with you.
Richard Feynman, one of the greatest physicists of the last century, said that sitting with uncertainty is okay. He said that he didn't need every answer. Not knowing things didn't frighten him. That kind of comfort with the unknown is rare. Most people can't do it.
Most people can't, that's right. And maybe that's the most human thing about religion. It takes the uncertainty that would otherwise be unbearable and gives it a shape, a story you can hold.
Carl Sagan, who was not religious, said something that I think applies here. He wrote that science itself can be a source of deep wonder. When he realized that the atoms in your body were made in dying stars billions of years ago, that you are literally stardust that somehow became aware of itself. That's not nothing, that's extraordinary.
I completely agree with that, and I think that kind of wonder doesn't need God at all. It just needs attention. It just needs paying attention to what's actually here.
So, what do we want you to walk away with? For me, it's this: belief is not weakness, questioning is not disrespect. You can hold your faith and still think critically. You can question and still be a good person. The real enemy isn't religion or atheism. The real enemy is the person or the system that tells you thinking for yourself is dangerous.
Mine is even simpler. The universe is 13.8 billion years old. The Milky Way alone has 300 billion stars. There are 2 trillion galaxies that we know of. And here we are on this one small planet fighting over which version of a story written by humans a few thousand years ago is the right one. And sometimes actually killing each other over it. Whatever the actual answer is, God, simulation, something we don't have words for yet, I think we can agree on one thing. We have one life we know about for sure, on one planet we know is real, surrounded by people who are struggling right now. The least we can do is stop using our beliefs as reason to hurt each other.
And that's all from our side today. If you learned something valuable today, make sure to hit the like button, and for more such uncomfortable topics, follow our podcast.
Before we let you go, we want to repeat what we said at the beginning. This was a conversation, not a verdict. We talked about atheism, belief, simulation theory, consciousness, and the political misuse of religion in India. We talked about Gujarat 2002 incident, Muzaffarnagar 2013 incident, and Delhi 2020 incident. Not to assign blame to any one group, but because those events are real, they happened, and they deserve to be spoken about honestly. We did not make this episode to hurt anyone. We did not make it to disrespect any religion or any community or any single person's faith. If you are a person of faith, we hope you heard us engaging seriously with your perspective. If you are a non believer, we hope you heard us talking about taking belief seriously too. The violence we described is something both of us condemn. We strongly condemn. Regardless of which community was involved, regardless of who was in power at the time, no belief justifies harm to another human being. None. If this episode made you think, even if it made you a little uncomfortable, that is exactly why we made it. We are Think Now Podcast. See you on the next one. Bye.